Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. It's Tori. Today I am super excited to be sharing with you guys my top 10 most prioritized and anticipated authors for the next year of reading. Now, I thought that this video would be a good follow-up to my top 10 fantasy and sci-fi books of all time video that I did a few days ago. I really had a good look at my shelves and I said, here's what I've loved so far. What are the books on my shelf that I am most anticipating, the authors that I am most anticipating reading? I also gave myself a few stipulations for this video. First of all, it has to be an author that I have read absolutely nothing of before. It has to be an author who has multiple books under their name. So it has to be someone that either has completed a series or trilogy or has multiple books that they've published. So with no further ado, I'm going to get into this stack. I am so excited to talk about these books. I'm so excited to read these books. And I will caveat this with the fact that I do not expect myself to get to all of these books in the year of 2023. Some of these will definitely be spilling into 2024, but that's okay. And I am really excited to talk about them and get into them as soon as I can either way. The first one on the stack is one that I'm actually planning on reading in the month of June 2023. I am so excited to start this series. I know that some people have said that it takes a little bit to really get into, but the payoff for this series apparently is just fantastic. That is Daniel Abraham's The Long Price Quartet. I have the omnibus edition, which includes all 4 of the individual books within this series. All that I know about this book, because I try to go into these as blind as possible, is that there are ancient empires, political intrigue, and it sounds like kind of a central character that maybe is going to lead us through the series. And again, if you're a veteran of this series, feel free to let me know in the comments if that is completely off base. But that is my initial impression of this series. Once you get to book 3 and 4, I have heard that the payoff for this series is insane and that there's so much within this series to talk about. And also the nice part about it is, even though this omnibus edition is a chonker, because there are 4 books included in it, it's not going to be that crazy hard to read because each book is only a few hundred pages. So this is one that I will be starting very shortly, and I could not be more excited to read this quartet and find out what all the fuss is about and have a lot of things, I'm sure, to talk about at the end. Next up on this list is an author that I have been hearing so many things about the last few months around the community, and someone that I have now had the pleasure of meeting, and that is Janny Wurts. There are 2 books that I am very excited to read that I have on the way to me by Janny Wurts. The first one is her standalone fantasy novel, To Ride Hell's Chasm, which I will be getting and probably starting with that one. The second one is Curse of the Mistwraith, which is book 1 in her series, The Wars of Light and Shadow. I've heard so many people laud this series as one of the most incredibly powerful prose-driven series in fantasy. And having heard Janny on multiple different interviews, I am just so excited to get to these books, and I cannot wait to learn from her incredible writing and prose. I'm really, really looking forward to it. I do intend to start with her standalone just to kind of give myself a taste of her writing style and acclimate myself to it before I make the jump and the commitment into the bigger series. Next up on this list is the Hanged God trilogy, or Northern Wrath, which is book 1 by Tilda Cold Holt. Now, I've had the opportunity to meet the author on Twitter. I wasn't really in the mood for more Nordic-inspired fantasy when I picked it up. That being said, I knew that this was probably a book that when I got to it, I was really going to love it. I'm so excited to read this, and I have now had several friends that have been reading this series and have had nothing but high praise for it. I'm very excited to get to this. Now, this is a fantasy that utilizes real-world mythology, So you have kind of the Viking and Nordic pantheon involved with the human characters, and that's really all I know about it. I am very excited to get to these, and I'm not gonna lie, these are rekindling my excitement for Nordic-inspired fantasy like crazy right now. The next author on this list is Anthony Ryan, and I have a couple of different books on my shelf by Anthony Ryan that I'm very excited to get to, one of which is Bloodsong. Now, I've heard so many things from people who think that I'm going to absolutely love this book. It has kind of a coming-of-age vibe. It has a warrior in training and very dark kind of atmosphere to it from what I understand, and I am 100% here for that all the time, as you guys know, and I am really excited to get to this. I also have his book The Pariah on my shelf, which I'm also very excited about. I'm so excited to get to these books because I feel like these are just really going to check a lot of boxes for me personally as a reader. I'm looking for a fast-paced, action-packed, really emotional, coming-of-age young warrior story, and I think I'm going to get that with this. Next up is the Green Bone Saga by the one and only Fonda Lee. This is one that has been sitting on my TBR for an embarrassingly long amount of time. This is a series that I am very excited to read. I know that the hype around it has been absolutely nuts lately, which is honestly one of the reasons why I haven't jumped into the trilogy yet. I have every anticipation of absolutely loving this, but I really wanted to give myself some space to have my own experience with it, and I am absolutely here for Asian-inspired martial arts gangster family fantasy. I could not be more excited. From what I've heard, Fonda Lee's understanding of martial arts and just the intrigue that exists within this trilogy is incredible, and I am absolutely ready and very excited to get into it. Next up is The Five Warrior Angels, which is the trilogy by Brian Lee Durfee, published by Simon & Schuster Saga Press. If you don't follow Brian Lee Durfee's YouTube channel, you absolutely should because it is fantastic. I've been sitting on this one for a while too, to be quite honest. I am very excited to read this trilogy. They are chonkers, so that's one of the reasons why I knew I wanted to make sure I had the time and the headspace to really commit to this trilogy, because even though they're chonkers, I've heard they read very quickly, and that they're excellent, excellent stories. So I did taste test the prologue of The Forgetting Moon a little while ago, and absolutely loved it. So I definitely think this is a series that will end up being read in the year 2023 because I was definitely hooked after the prologue, and we will see if the rest of the trilogy lives up to that incredible beginning. Next up, I'm gonna swing over to the indie fantasy side of the world, and I am going to mention Philip C. Quaintrell, and specifically his Echoes saga series, which recently was completed this last year, which is very exciting. Congratulations to Philip for that. What I'm looking for in this and what I'm anticipating getting out of this is just some really solid classic fantasy with excellent characters, and we like to throw around the buzzwords that, oh, it's classic fantasy written for a modern audience, which I feel like everybody says about anything at this point, and I really feel like this is the series that I'm looking for, that really kind of Tolkien, but written in the 21st century. I'm really excited to get into this. I'm looking forward to reading a fantasy with a ranger as our MC. I'm guessing this is multiple POVs, but I know that there are elves and a lot of those classic fantasy elements in this series, and I am just really excited to pick this up and just have a great time with it. Next up is The Grace of Kings by Ken Liu. Now, it probably doesn't shock anyone that the Dandelion Dynasty is a hugely anticipated series for me. I have heard so many interviews with Ken Liu that just blew me away. I think he just has so much wisdom to offer in the discussions that he has on writing, and it was very clear to me very quickly that this was going to be a series that I was really going to have to be in the right headspace to give myself the time to slow down and really dig in and really experience what this series has to offer. It is a little intimidating for me, I am not gonna lie. This series intimidates me probably more than anything else on this list. I know that this series is influenced and inspired by historical events in Asian history, and that excites me very much because I think we need more of that in the genre. So yeah, I anticipate absolutely loving this series. I am intimidated by it, but I am very excited to get in and see the masterpiece that Ken Liu has created here. Next up is an author that was recommended to me by one of my close writer friends, Andrew Meredith, and he told me that I needed to check out Lois McMaster Bujold, and I have her book, The Curse of Shalion, here. And again, I don't know a lot about this series. I do know that there is a middle-aged female protagonist in this series, which makes me very excited to read. What I'm expecting from this is just an incredibly solid, character-driven, Western European classic fantasy feel, if that makes sense. And I really have been wanting to lean into reading some of my female fantasy writer predecessors, get a chance to really dig into their work and learn from them through their series. And Bujold is definitely somebody that I have had highly recommended to me. I really have no idea what to expect from her. I'm going in pretty much completely blind, as I am with as many of these as I can, and I'm very excited to see her writing style and what her story is, but I very much anticipate falling in love with some characters in this series. Now, this last one takes the place behind Dandelion Dynasty as probably the second most anticipated and yet mildly terrifying read, and that is Christopher Rocchio's Sun Eater series. I am so excited to read this. I know that it's a massive scope, very heavily character-driven science fiction space odyssey, basically. My understanding is that the main character, Hadrian, did something at some point in the history of this series that had incredibly catastrophic consequences. In this series, I'm really anticipating getting a kind of the Malazan of science fiction, I guess, if that makes sense. I'm looking for a series that is going to really be vast in the scope that it presents, but also have the characters that pull me in and ground me through the story, and I can't let go. I definitely anticipate loving this series. I've heard nothing but amazing things about it from a lot of people that I really respect the opinions of, and readers that I know often have tastes that align with mine. So I'm really looking forward to getting to these. I can't wait. So there is my list of most anticipated series and or authors from science fiction and fantasy that I have never read before. I can't wait to meet some new favorite authors this next year. I think that all of these series and all of these reads are really going to leave a big impression on me, and I'm curious to see which of them, if any, end up jumping onto my top 10 list when I come back to it next year. I would love to hear from you guys what your most anticipated reads and or authors in science fiction and fantasy are. Definitely drop those down below in the comments. It often feels like there's not enough hours in the day to read all of the amazing fantasy and science fiction series out there, but I'm gonna do my darndest, and I'm excited to bring you guys along with me. Which of these series are you most excited for me to read? Which ones do you think, if you know my reading tastes from watching the channel, let me know which ones down in the comments that you think I'm really gonna click with, and I will be back to let you know. So I hope you guys are also having a fabulous week. I hope you're reading 5-star reads, and I will see you in the next video.